My name is Jenny Hawkes, a long-term member of Future for Religious Heritage, with an interest in craft skills for many years. FRH, set up in 2011, is a membership organisation across Europe with interests in all aspects of religious heritage. It runs conferences, face-to-face and other meetings, bringing together all that are interested in, work in and support this diverse and important sector. It has surveyed people across Europe regarding their interest in the subject and recently undertook a survey of European-built heritage craft skills. More of this later. FRH has an ever-expanding database called Religiana, which some of you may know, which lists many religious buildings across Europe. FRH is also aware of the extremely useful database from Heritage Association UK, Red List of Extinct and Endangered Craft Skills. Worrying, but we are delighted to see is being emulated in Germany and more pleased across Europe. A brief note about me. For some years, I worked as Church's support officer in the Diocese of Norwich, Church of England, with over 650 churches, many of them medieval and grade 1 or 2-star listed, and therefore needing care and restoration from skilled heritage craftspeople, so my knowledge is extensive. Being a member of FRH has enabled me and FRH to look across Europe at all religious heritage and see that the need for skilled craftspeople for maintenance and restoration is at a critical stage. An aging workforce, lack of training or apprenticeships, and of course, lack of funding. We hope that this session will be of value to you all. I will now hand over to my colleague Madina Benvenuti, who runs Made in Europe, to tell you about it and to introduce our 4 experts to share their knowledge and experience with you. Might we suggest that we leave questions to the end of the presentations, but please do use the chat to make points and ask questions which will be monitored. Madina.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you very much, and hi to everybody. Yes, so I created Made in Europe in 2013, and the purpose of Made in Europe has always been to revival the craft sector, so to bring a contribution for the transmission of skills, of course, but also to raise awareness about the importance of crafts professions all over Europe. We started 2 years ago a collaboration with FRH, and that was the starting point of this study, because we did some interviews of craftspeople all over Europe that are engaged in the preservation of built heritage and religious heritage. And after this series of interviews, which you can see on both sides of FRH and Made in Europe, we realized how much these professions are endangered, and how much it is important to know more about these professions, to know more about the framework in which the skills are transmitted, and also to find some solution to make recommendation also to policymakers. So after this series of interviews, we set up some questions for a survey, and we decided to address to 3 target groups. The 3 target groups represent the stakeholders that are involved in the preservation of tangible and intangible heritage. I'm speaking about craftspeople, so we addressed 1 survey to craftspeople. I'm speaking about all people that curate and take care of built heritage, so historic house owners, curators and surveyors, and all the even architects. And then the 3rd group is the group which is in charge of the transmission of skills in the craft sector. So the survey was divided in 3 parts, addressing these 3 targets. And what we would like to enhance in this study that we made, and which is just the beginning of something, because we believe there is much more to do, is that these groups are really linked to each other and they need each other. So it's important to have bottom-up information from each of them, and to make recommendation taking into account the point of view of each of them. So before I introduce the study, the four experts that are representing these groups, I would like to give the floor to Yelena, who is working with Made in Europe as well, and who will give you a brief overview of the study. The full study is quite long. It will be published soon by FRH and Made in Europe, so you will have access to all of it. It's important to say that this is a starting point, because by doing it, we realize how much it's important to have more information, to reach a wider target, to involve more stakeholders even in the study. So that's a starting point. It's not a finalized study. It's really to start the process, which will we continue, because we have further initiatives like a conference in Paris within the CRAFT project, where we will also target these objectives, and other initiatives even with FRH, which we will continue to organize. So Yelena, the floor is yours, and for the presentation of the study, I think you can share the screen.
Yes, thank you, Medina. So here it is, just to make it bigger. So these are just, as Medina mentioned, these are just the key findings. The study is much longer and has much more information that you will see here. But as you already heard, so the survey was launched at the end of 2023, together in collaboration with Future for Religious Heritage and Made in Europe. And it was aimed to see the situation of built heritage crafts skills in Europe in terms of education, certification, practice, and transmission to new generations. And those are the three groups of the respondents we targeted as our survey respondents. And it's crafts professionals working within the built heritage context. Then it's architect, curators, conservation surveyors, conservation engineers, and owners of historic buildings. And the third groups were the schools and craft training establishments. So before we look at the key findings, it's important to stress out that even though we reached over 25,000 people through 2 organizations and all our networks, we were able to receive fewer than 300 answers. So only 300 people completed the full survey. So this shows us that there is an urgent need to raise awareness about the issues, and as Medina was mentioning, collect the bottom-up information. So let's take a look at the first target group, the crafts professionals. So we here collected a total of 151 respondents. And these are some of the key findings. So to open up the discourse about it, there is a quote that we want to show you. So it comes from the woodcraft professional from Spain, who says, "Nowadays, studies are more valued than knowing how to make crafts. Nowadays, it's more important to show that you have spent 4 years studying at the university than 45 years working. As a result, when people seek to engage with or learn from craftsmanship, they may overlook or undervalue those with extensive experience, dismissing them as too old or no longer around." So this was one of our first questions, and it shows the geographical distribution map. So as you could see, we collected most of the answers coming from France, 62, then Italy, then Belgium, United Kingdom, Spain, and then, yeah, United States is outside of Europe, but we still had some answers even from there. And the rest, we would say they're pretty low number of answers. So it's not something that you could really take into account as seeing how is the state of crafts in Portugal, for example, because we have just one. Then we wanted to take a look at, there is this myth that the crafts professionals are usually located in the rural areas. And with this graphic, you could see that the people that answered our survey actually came from equally rural areas, cities, and small, medium towns. So this fact challenges the common perception that crafts are predominantly rural. They're not, they're actually in all environments. So when it comes to craft sectors, you could see that the most represented craft sector is wood crafts, metal crafts, and clay crafts. And then it goes down to others, while like musical instruments, restoration, and preservation are pretty low. So the more specific the craft is, it gets the lower number of practitioners, of professionals. Then we also wanted to see how many of them engage in the heritage preservation. And according to this, you could see that 40 people, 40 craft professionals, 40%, they work with heritage preservation on a regular basis, while 30.5 work sometimes. So it means that crafts they have a really important role in maintaining cultural heritage, and also heritage is an important economic niche with valuable business opportunities for crafts professionals. And this is something to keep in mind when we talk about policies and recommendations. So when it comes to age distribution, for example, the myth that the craft sector is aging is not a myth, it's a truth. So majority of people are over 50, 56%, while also 30% of our respondents were in the age group 40 to 50. So as you could see, it is usually the people who are in between 40 onwards. Then, as we know, so as the craft sector is aging, it's really important to look at the transmission of skills. And luckily, what came out of our study is that 65% of the respondents are engaged in passing on their skills, which is kind of like a really good remark, but still, there are still 34.4 who are not. The other thing we looked at was the succession plan. Since the craft sector is aging, we asked whether they know what their real business will be after they retired. And this is a bit unfortunate that 102 of our respondents, they still don't know what they will do with their business after they retire, for example. So these were some conclusions drawn. So 55% of those over 50 are uncertain about what will happen to their business upon retirement, and 11.6% foresee closing because they could not find somebody to continue their small businesses. So this is also something really crucial. Then we look at the other side of the coin, and we wanted to see whether crafts professionals think the customers value what they do. And as you see this blue part, so 59% said their quality work is recognized, but still cost is prioritized, which means that organizations like FRH and Made in Europe and similar other, we have to keep on increasing customers' awareness and appreciation for the value of skilled craftsmanship. So that one day we will be able to see the change here and say that they really value crafts despite of the cost. Now let's take a look at the second target group, which are architects, curators, conservations, and other people involved in heritage sector. So we collected the total of 81 respondents here. And these are some of the key findings. So first, this is a map showing the geographical distribution. So here, instead of France being at the first place, we have Spain with 32, France with 13, Belgium with 9, and then the rest would be pretty low numbers. So the area of the activity, this is good because we aimed at 3 different target groups inside of this second big target, and we got kind of like equal respondents in all the sectors. So we had the same kind of 23 of curators, 32% of architects, and 44% of owners of historic buildings. Then we wanted to see how often they work or collaborate with crafts professionals. As you could see, the most common answer was often, with 45.7%. So there is a clear commitment to preserving traditional techniques, but still there is a number of people, even though it's just 3.7, there is a number of people who do not collaborate. So it means that the skills are not valued enough because there is a never as an answer. So this graphic on here now shows us which crafts professionals working in which crafts areas are most commonly needed. And as you can see, so the most often are carpentry, roofing, and stone crafts, while more specific crafts as bell making or restoration of musical instruments are almost never needed, but still they're needed. So it's from here, it's important to conclude that this trend suggests that while specialized skills are less frequently required, they're still essential in preserving traditional craftsmanship. So we cannot just say like, okay, there's not a big need of bell makers and just avoid of raising awareness about them and transmitting the skills. But it's important to keep on transmitting even the specific skills. So then we wanted to see how they reach when they need the crafts professionals, so the ways of networking. And as you could see, the most commonly are peers and through other crafts practitioners, as well as professional organizations and heritage organizations. So this would lead us to a conclusion that architects, curators, historic houses owner, they usually stick to a really personal and closed networks, which sometimes can limit who they work with, but it also lowers the innovation and the discovery of new talent in the sector. So key factors in selecting craft professionals. So when they choose who they will work with, they usually rely on, as most important, as you can see, is the cost of the practitioner, crafts based in local areas, and very important, so they rely on experience and skills. So the experience is read, they rely on durability, quality of work, and respecting the deadlines, as well as also the based in local areas is important to them. So the conclusions would be that the primary factors are the durability of work, experience, and a preference of locally based craftspeople. And there is also a preference for experience over certification in the sector that was recognized. And this is also confirmed by many quotes we had in the survey. And this is just one of them coming from a historic houses owner in Netherlands who says, we work with restoration painters, for example. They have an education in this profession, but they do not always have an official certificate. We don't hire specific people with a certification. Proven quality of work is more important. And while this is good, on the other hand, it's important to emphasize here that experience is highly valued in the restoration or conservation, but still for the listed building, certification remains essential. So it means that often we have professionals with over 20 years of experience that lack the formal certification, and due to this lack, this limits their possibility to grow and to expand their work. And this is just a graphic on showing quickly the certification status. So 55% possess the certification status, but in total 45 they don't possess the certification. And 17.2 claims it's not required, while 27 simply don't have it. And the most common reason for not possessing one is because there isn't one in their crafts at all. This leads us to the final target group, schools and craft training establishments, where we collected the total of 27 respondents. And these are the key findings. So to open up the discourse, it's the quote coming from the architect in Spain that says it's highly important to establish vocational training schools that include active craftspeople as teachers. So again, we started with the geographical distribution map. So we had most answers coming from Spain with 6 schools, Italy 5, Belgium 4, and then the rest goes down to Portugal with 2 and the rest with 1. So the teaching path, as you could see, we wanted to see whether they have certified diploma, a short curriculum, or a long one. And as you can see, it really varies across different crafts. But still the most common is the short curriculum, which is this blue, as you can see, is always the longest one. So the conclusion from the teaching path would be that there is a lack of standardized certification. And this absence of a consistent certification system across Europe makes it difficult for students and employers to measure the value of qualifications. And this is probably the reason why experience is more valued as well. So students' average age, so majority of students are between 18 and 30 with 48%, but still there is a high number of students being in between age range of 40 to 50 and 30 to 40, which indicates that there is a need of a complementary education. So often craft professionals involved in schools in order to specialize or improve some of their skills they already possess. So the students' financial framework, it also, you see, it varies. So sometimes the students have to pay for their schools, sometimes they receive public funding. So it's pretty different according to a country and the craft itself and the school. So this would be the conclusion, that sometimes students must pay their tuition fees while others receive public funding. This is when it comes to a teaching framework. So majority of the schools we collected answers from, they have 80% of practice and 20% of theory. So the practice is widely prioritized. But still, what is important to mention here is that subjects like digital tools, sustainability, entrepreneurship, and communication are often optional or not offered at all, which you will see in the graphic to follow. So not proposed is the red one, and it's entrepreneurship, communication, and marketing, which is pretty high that it's not proposed at all, and it's pretty useful. Then also digital tools and sustainability, as you see here. So from this graphic, and we concluded that there is a limited digital skills training, so there is not a lot of help for a digital transition, and also there is a curriculum gaps, like essential subjects are not offered in the curriculum of the current craft schools. A special focus on communication and marketing. The majority of schools, like 40 respondents, they don't offer communication and marketing as a course at all. And before we conclude, once again, we wanted to emphasize that this is just the first step. We didn't reach much people, but still we collected valuable insights. And yes, we hope that this will just be one first step on the big journey of really helping craft sector become stronger and thrive. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Yelena. And yeah, just before we introduce the four experts, I think there are really, what Yelena just said is very important, that there is a need to develop a stronger methodology to collect information, because Europe is very fragmented. These sectors are also very fragmented inside, but they don't always collaborate each other enough. And it's very hard to have bottom-up information. So the idea of developing a stronger methodology to empower this study and find solutions is in the pipeline. And also, for example, as an example, bell makers, it's true that people that we interviewed didn't say they need bell makers, but when we interviewed bell makers with FRH, what they said is that they need young people to learn the profession because they have a lot of demand, in fact, because for 60 years, bells were not repaired, restored, replaced. And so now there is a need of bells. So it's important always to match the answers that we have, even if bell making is a niche, of course. So now let me introduce you to the four experts. We divided their testimonials according to the groups that we created. So for the sector of education in crafts, I would like to give the floor to Dominique Taylo and Panos Kostoulas from Greece. But first, I would say a few words about Boulouki. Boulouki is an initiative that they launched. Boulouki means in Greek traveling group, and it reflects the tradition of itinerant stonemasons and craftspeople. It aimed to trace, document, and preserve traditional knowledge through workshops and building projects, collaborating with local communities. Their work has focused primarily in Epirus, always in Greece. And the first workshop, Boulouki at the Bridge, involved restoring the cobblestone path to Plaka Bridge, aligning with the monument's restoration. In 2024, Boulouki won a European Heritage Award for Education, Training, and Skills. And now I will give the floor to Panos and to Dominique so that they can introduce themselves and say us a little bit more about all this. Panos or Dominique? I don't know who wants to start.
Hi, I'm Dominique Taylo. I was brought up in the UK, so I'm English. And so what I'm going to do, I'm a craftsman, a master craftsman who's just about half a century of experience. And so I thought what I would present was how crafts were transmitted to me, my generation, and my ideas and experiences of transmitting those crafts now to the next couple of generations. So I'll start off with a potted biography, which is, as it unfolds, you'll see that it's at every step, I needed to find masters or let's say information to feed my passion. So yes, I started working with on wooden boats in the south of France in 1975, not 1875. And then I came back to UK and did a 5-year apprenticeship in London, working on a lot of heritage buildings, but also very nice aesthetic jobs. I found a master who he didn't have the attitude that he was also an artist, and so we covered many trades. So I started working with lime in about 82, plastering and mortar, and finished that apprenticeship. And then I moved eventually in the late 80s to Australia. So I lived 15 years there, where I did earth construction for about 8 years of that. And eventually moving to India, where I did 7 years of marble stone cutting, carving furniture. I did 2 years of blacksmithing at the end of the 80s in the last blacksmithing school in the UK. So each of these steps forced me to find how I could possibly do it. And one thread through the story is that I've been self-employed. So I'm from a very particular band of craftsmen. So I've been self-employed apart from about 2 or 3 years of my life. And which has enabled me to be much more flexible because I haven't had to look for employment. It's actually, everything's been informal. It's basically word of mouth. All the advertising that I was ever able to do was basically throwing money away. It's maybe something to do with me, but in the end, word of mouth has given me 50 years of employment. And so now I've just retired, so I'm basically just going to focus on education with Boulouki. And I'm living, sorry, yes, didn't finish. I moved to Greece in 2013, so I've been working here ever since. Right. So what I'm going to say about the various cultures that I worked in is obviously from my personal experience, not a survey. I hope that there's no generalizations because it's just what I experienced in those cultures and how I learned and transmitted within those cultures. So starting with England, it was basically my generation that brought about the renaissance of timber framing and lime work. That's not to say that there weren't artisans around who knew these things, but information was very, very hard to come by. The building code wasn't available for timber frame buildings. So that meant our generation had to deal with the government, the building code to actually form a building code on the sizes of each member of a trust, for instance. Nothing was known about it. So you couldn't actually get building consent for it. So all that was done by my generation. And one thing I want to say about that was that who in my generation it was. What I observed was it was virtually all middle-class kids who had a reasonably affluent upbringing. Let's say they didn't have to think about their stomachs, and decided that they wanted something more from their employed life than money. So we were mostly passionate, and that took us through being able to push all these through and be able to make a living from it. And actually, so that's my generation. And as you go to different countries, you get different things. When I went to France, then eventually I learned about the whole compagnon system and how the heritage is, how it's been transmitted there. The link hasn't been cut, whereas in England it had to be reformed. And now again, it has become a mainstream possibility for almost every aspect of society, with all the qualifications there in place. And that was all started by my friends, actually, just us that started all that stuff, late 70s, early 80s. So how am I going to go with this? Okay, yes. So there's a compagnon system in France, which is one possibility. So I'll talk about that. It's about scale I want to talk about as well, the scale of education and what I feel works better. I do feel that there's always been, because the craftsmen have been there and have been more mainstream because of the whole structure of the compagnon system and other systems, but let's say the compagnon system, I feel there's been a greater demand for quality work in those countries and less dependent on the modern materials. And my kind of attitude towards modern materials is basically you build with rubbish and then you hide it with paint. And so my dream is in a structure that you can smash a hole in that structure and it's all beautiful all the way through. There's nothing that you wouldn't want to look at. So I think France and the Mediterranean countries have, say Western Mediterranean countries have appreciated that more, but especially France and all the countries that have the traditional artisan training systems in place, so Germany and Austria and so forth. Yeah, so where do we go from there? Okay, so I'll just go back in my book to the thing that I wrote.
Can I ask you a question,
yeah.
Dominique, about this? Do you think there is also a need to educate people, not only craftspeople, but people? Because what you say, seeing beautiful things at every stage, even what is hidden, should be beautiful. Do you think that, do you have the feeling that there is awareness about this, or the people just want to put what you call wallpaper and then nobody knows what is behind?
It's a funny two-edged thing, because there's something which occurs. I haven't prepared this for now, but it's a really interesting question, because say in Western Europe right now, another generalization, I would say people appreciate heritage much more than, say, for instance, what I experience here in Greece, where people just want the cheapest work possible. Now, I know that was a complaint of people in Western Europe too, but with beautiful work also comes with a certain preciousness. And I mean that in a negative way, which I don't really appreciate. So in a way, the Greek thing of not caring about anything and the over preciousness, what I call over preciousness, which occurs in the West, which is, in a sense, what I'm saying is entitlement, I think, by people, which is different from if you're working on a restoration project, but in the private sector, I mean, I'm talking about the private customer sector, it doesn't do a good balance between the artisan and the customer. Yeah, so all this needs, I think it's a whole new topic actually, but it's a really good topic. If I could just carry on. So I wanted to start now with saying this thing about what do I value about my working life? So obviously it's paid the bills, more or less. Because I grew up with my stomach being satisfied, I understood that I wasn't that interested in money, apart from my needs, which weren't so great. So money actually wasn't nourishing enough for me. I was a passionate, and I am a passionate guy, and I needed to have passion. And you've got these two words in English. You've got tradesman and craftsman. And actually, it doesn't really mean anything except in attitude to me. When I was working as a help as a laborer on building sites, everybody hated being there, slagged off. I mean, were rude about all the professionals that they interacted with and the customers, and just looked at their clocks all the time when they could get home. So there is something about these two words in the English culture which become very different. And if you're looking at who's going to be inspired to receive the transmission from the older craftsmen, for me, you've got to see that the only people that are going to be attracted to what I do are people that have passion and don't know quite where to put it. So again, what I see is that the people that nearly always turn up in Greece to whether it's seminars or apprenticeships and everything is not teenagers, not the traditional age for an apprenticeship. They're mostly young people who've thought a bit about what they want. They've removed themselves from the pressure, from parental and societal pressure, and have decided, actually, like me, I was meant to be an art historian, and I was suddenly turned into a carpenter. I was like, I think that's good enough for me. So what I'm noticing is this whole group of people that come through the door and want transmission are only people that have actually gone through a certain process themselves in order to be ready to look for something which might not be mainstreamly popular.
That's a real issue that we all face. Maybe time is running, so maybe we should give the floor to Panos also. That probably are you okay with this?
I have two very short things to say because I obviously wrote far too much for this.
Yeah, you can take some of my time because I have only very few things to say.
Okay. One thing I wanted to talk about was scale. So the scale of education. So you've got compagnon scale, you've got government initiative scale, and then you've got Boulouki type scale, which for me is much easier because I'm a basic guy who likes to relate to other humans 1-to-1 or 10-to-10. So I see the Boulouki scale certainly working, although we need 30 Bouloukis in Greece, let alone the rest of Europe, which is seminars and small apprenticeships and they're managing to find some funding for. And the other thing, which I was just suddenly thinking of this morning, a lot of my peers became professional carpenters and other things in England because of the TOPS courses that happened in the 70s and early 80s, where you did a year at a carpentry school. You were paid by the government a small amount of money, and at the end, you received a set of tools. And this was absolutely wonderful. I know so many people who went into craftsmanship, really nice timber frame work, restoration of old buildings through a very simple scheme, which obviously in the mid-80s was removed access to. So I think it's quite interesting to look at scale and how education gets delivered, because they're quite different things. They've all got advantage, obviously funding for TOPS courses, amazing to push for that. But on the other end of the scale is funding for Boulouki type enterprises, what you call them, projects, which I love. I mean, I basically love. And last thing I'm going to say, I know I'm running out of time, but yesterday, my 6 apprentices, I said to them, now you've got 5 extra students, show them what I've shown you last week, and just to watch them explaining to the other students, they've been there 2 weeks and they're explaining to the students who've been there for 2 days how to do everything. just brings joy to my heart. You know, it's like I've passed the baton on that one. It's the most wonderful feeling for a aging guy coming towards the end of his working life. I'm done.
Thank you very much, Dominique. Panos.
Okay, yeah, I will need just 5 minutes, I believe. So yeah, like I think Madina introduced Boulouki, which is a Greek NGO. I would just add that our care about traditional building techniques is not only about preserving the craft for restoration projects, but in general for the contemporary building sector. So we deal also with restoration and new construction projects. And through them, we're educating and training young craftspeople and architects and engineers. And we're doing a participatory project with local communities. So, yeah, we received the European prize, the Europa Prize for education and training this year. And it's the first time that a Greek team organization in general receives this prize. And this means a lot about where Greece is at the moment at this sector, because there are no active training programs, institutional or other professional training programs in Greece right now regarding traditional building techniques and other crafts as well. So we're trying to raise awareness on this apart from conducting our own programs, which are indeed very like, small drops. As Dominic said, we would need 30 Bouloukis in Greece to really reach at a certain level that we would say, that we have revived skills at the mainstream level, let's say. But okay, we are trying our best, and it's like I believe that there are, since 2018 that we started working, many of the people who participate in our workshops, or other people who came in contact with our initiative, also started doing something similar in like various geographical areas, in the islands or in other mountain regions, or even in the cities. So this is very giving hope, and we're creating synergies within Greece, but also with other partners in Europe, because we are trying also to communicate and find out examples, good examples that we could bring in to Greece, and also share our experience with them as well. So I believe that the need for training in vocational training in Greece and many other countries, actually, especially southeast of Europe, where there is a big lack of this kind of training, is, first of all, yes, big vocational schools, institutional type, like the type of compagnon that Dominic said before. Apart from the tour that they do, I mean, okay, they have these 2 or 3 year long courses by experienced craftspeople, going in depth through the craft. But I understand that this is not so easy to start from scratch here, like or in other countries, that this doesn't exist. But even if we set up this kind of schools, this is not enough. It's not just like we're covering certain aids, and we're covering something very important, but we need also shorter programs which might fit for people who are maybe a little older and maybe want to do like another kind of education throughout their life. And many times we need upskilling or reskilling because people get unemployed in certain areas, and they need, for example, a 6-month-long program with which they can continue their professional life and slightly maybe change it. And of course, participatory projects with local communities, because this is something very important. I mean, the traditional knowledge is not just about experts. and knowledge which is shared between a closed group of people. But a big part of it was and still is within local communities with people who are dealing, for example, with agriculture. Sorry. Yeah. So this is somehow connected, and it's a knowledge which is shared many times within local communities. And if people from local communities who are not craftspeople or professionals in this sector don't participate in like some small restoration and simple restoration projects, we're not going to, preserve all these kilometers, like thousands of kilometers of dry stone walls and paths, which are recently listed in UNESCO as tangible and intangible heritage. So this is there are certain crafts which are shared within communities, and also architects and engineers are not just the people who have to be, on their laptops and make drawings and just send them to some other craftspeople down there somewhere. It's like in our programs, we can see many architects and engineers who wants to come and realize what the actual construction is and want to work with their hands and want to create overlaps between them and the craftspeople. And many of them are both, are doing are dealing with both.
And sorry to interrupt you. I think this is also very good for the creation of a sense of belonging and awareness of populations about their own heritage, because they are much more involved in the preservation of it. So this is also very important because it can also tackle different generations, and they get they suddenly understand better their own heritage, which is very important. I'm sorry, we need maybe, is it okay if we give the floor to Rodolphe, who is on the other side, because Rodolphe de Looz-Corswarem, who's in Belgium. Rodolphe, I will let you introduce yourself because you do it much better. But Rodolphe is answering more to the target that we addressed of history building owners. So this is the testimonials that we were asking to him. Rodolphe?
Yes, thank you very much. I'm going to be very short. My CV is not important. What is important is the way we need the craft people to help the owners of historic houses. Just to give you a number, the members of our Historic House Association are from 27 countries, and we've got 55,000 historic houses into the members of our association. And I would say, without being very wrong, that most of them need every single year the craftsman to come and see what's happening. There is a difference of the houses which are protected by the member states. That means they got some of the resources which are allowed to be given to them by regions or member states, and some others are not. And many of those historic houses who should be who should get your money from the region of the house don't want them because of the time to get the people to get there. It's much more expensive to get officials from different countries to come because of the time and the cost. And very often they choose not to get any resource from the state because of those hassle of these administration issue. There is also starting now to get very good example. Most of the time, the craftsmen are not official. The people who are accepting to do the work are the people who had many years experience, and they don't want to get the hassle to get young people with them because it takes too much time. That is a question of education. And thank you very much. I saw what you have seen, what has been presented. I think it's a very important issue. Young people don't seem to be interested to come and work a couple of years or more to learn a work that is important. Another question I have, just listen what you've said. Haven't seen much of what's happening in Germany, in the UK. I know in France we have very good example, but why are they absent to answer? Have they got any needs of craftsmen? That's a question that we can raise for the study, because they are such an important countries for historic house. And here we are. The only thing I want to say is that we need badly craftsmen, good quality craftsmen, and it is an issue, not only in 1 or 2 countries, but most 27 countries where our association has got members. And I'm talking also about a personal experience. Every single day, I need craftsmen to come, and I have to wait months and months to do it. Then if we can get, like in the Netherlands, a study that could help those people who need and come every day or every 2 years to start to find out what are the repairs that needs to be done, that will be a great overvalue for all. Cheaper, quicker, and probably not so important that we could have young people to start their work. That's all I wanted to tell you, and I want to thank you for what you've done for the presentation. I think it's very interesting, and I'm very happy to see that there is progress being done. Thank you very much.
And I just have a question for you, Rodolphe. You also know that there is a new generation of historic houses owners. This parallel organization within the historic houses, European historic houses. How do they feel? Do you have some feedback from them, the new owners, the ones that are taking over the houses, and that sometimes they really need support, they need to understand what they will do, because the historic houses are not, you cannot live in the historic houses today like you used 100 years ago. So what is your feeling when you exchange with the next gen organization, if you have any feedback?
The next generation is probably much more clever than the old generation. They find different way. And what we try to organize at the European Historic House is to get in each country a club of next generation. They can exchange, and they do that. What kind of good craftsmen have you got? But again, the difficulty is that it's difficult to get them. You are young on all Historic House Association. The young are more clever, but they have got huge problem to find people to help them. And often they've got another job on the side. And then the time to get a craftsman is important, but it's difficult to get a speedy service when there's an urgency. The reason behind, let's try to get people who come quicker, and the states who are helping some of protected house should be helped in that way. Are you
Thank
happy
you very
with the
much.
answer, or you want another answer?
Sorry. Oh, we could
Because your
discuss
smile
that
is so
for
good that we never know.
we could discuss this for hours, because it's a passion, really very interesting topic. And speaking about architecture and using traditional crafts in new buildings, now I'm happy to give the floor to Georgia, because this is something that she knows very well. And maybe Georgia was an architect. She's Romanian but based in UK, and very much involved in the INTBAU network. So Georgia, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I will share my screen now, and I'm going up because I prepared a few slides. Just a moment.
I love this picture.
Oh, yes. Actually,
Yes.
this picture is from Romania, and I love it very much.
Yes.
I see that the format of the screen, it's not really the format of my slides, so a bit of them will be lost, I'm afraid. I don't know what to do. So I will start my presentation. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Georgia. I am a conservation architect, but also a promoter of new traditional architecture, as Madina said. Being passionate about traditional building techniques and craftsmanship on their continual elevation for the present, I regard conservation works and the new traditional architecture rather connected. than disconnected. And I think a better cross collaboration would be very beneficial. As I consider that building new and preserving beautiful places have common core grounds, I encourage very much the sharing of high-skilled craftsmen trained in the heritage field with a new traditional built environment. In this way, the perpetuation of the heritage crafts and the regeneration of the endangered traditional building practice can be better supported. I also believe that the knowledge embedded in the old buildings can stand as the viable model of sustainability, along with being a source of inspiration and knowledge of endangered or lost crafts and building methods. In this way, documenting the findings revealed during the conservation works can become an active tool for inspiring new traditional architecture. In this slide, we have practically two drawings from the Manuale di Recupero. There are other similar books in which practically it was an attempt to recover the way it was built in the past to be like a manual for the new building, because conserving the heritage built environment, we practically learn how to build for the future. I will start my presentation of new traditional architecture with one case from Romania, which is a very particular case study because it's like a practical demonstration of what I said by now, that having inspiration in old architecture, but also in understanding the local tradition, you can create something new while still preserving what's around you. So that's a very good example. This is Bunești School from Romania, the winner of the big prize of European Prize of Architecture Philippe Rotier 2024. And it's very interesting because as Boulouki, it's an architectural project, but also a school. It is located in the middle of a forest, and it started as an alternative, hands-on approach to learning architecture. The professor and students are building together, learning a new skill and crafts from the local builders from the nearby villages, or experimenting almost lost building techniques documented in old architectural books. While they build together, they are building themselves too, in a more complete architect and human beings. The PV pavilions are built with minimal local materials, the earth from the side, the timber from the woods around them, the stones, the pebble from the river close by, and any other natural and easy accessible materials. Each pavilion that you see here, it's an exercise of building crafts dedicated to a specific natural material and building technique. So I will start with the round house, which is the student house, where we have several lost techniques or ancient techniques. The foundation are on compacted earth, which is not actually allowed. The normative are not allowed in this in a building which would house a more important role. The structure is in timber, in Vitruvian burn oak foundation pillars. The ceilings are in wattle, the walls filled with adobe brick, earth plasters, and painted with a blue lime wash towards the internal courtyard. The roof is in softwood shingles in 3 layers installed by old masters. 2 of them already died, and one was 80, the helpers were 70. Inspiration to do this came from Vitruvius' book or on local people. They learn a lot on how to plaster the walls from a local lady who showed them exactly the pressure with which you have to press the earth to become compacted and to have the right consistency. The inner corridor is paved with ribbed stones, while the students' room receive a more noble carpet made from Greco-Roman opus lapilli technique. Another important thing is the pavilion was built by students and villagers in a true claca tradition. This is a collective effort of intensive building involving the full community. Another pavilion, which is the trapeza, tried to reinstate old Byzantine type of building. It was inspired by the refectory of St. Anthony of the Great Monastery in Egypt and is dedicated to adobe. We can see here the Byzantine ductile masonry. They ordered some bespoke made bricks for that. Everything is bonded with lime mortar, with crushed brick dust, technique which is very common used in our Orthodox churches. Of course, now people are not building like that, and villagers were extremely puzzled by why you need so thick walls, why you did it like that. The vault is inspired by the Mesopotamian catenary vaulting, which is an autonomous vault without framework, using inclined arches supported on the two gables on the end. A third pavilion that I present from that school, it's one which combines tradition and innovation. Again, the structure, it's a suspended cantilever structure on pilots using the Vitruvian burnt oak foundation technique. But the innovation consists on those walls which are on hempcrete, highly insulated. And also the roof, it's hiding some very sophisticated collection of water channels and also the solar panels. Again, timber was very important, this being like a silvicultural culture in the middle of a forest, and the beautiful timber details are adorning the pavilion. It's very important, the Bunner School from this point of view, but I will jump to another project from UK. This maybe will answer Rodolphe's question, what's the situation of conservation, but also the owners of historical houses in UK. I choose this project because I know it very well, but also because it's a very special one. It's a combination of conservation and new build. So apart from the obviously conserving walls of works of stone or cleaning the walls and refinishing them with lime plaster, there are a lot of new features. As we can see in those slides, that's on the left, it's the existing as it was when the new owners of the historical house bought it, an intermediary phase, and then the finished product. We can see that all the ceilings are new, paneling, flooring, fireplaces, everything is new. And what's special about this project is that the architects were not so much involved in all the detailing. Practically, they approved the overall design schemes, but then the craftsman took over and detailed everything in the slightest detail. We have two of the main contractors, Jack Badger, which is a fantastic joinery company, and they have a very interesting way of combining hand working with computer 3D modeling to test their models, and then they have a fantastic way of achieving a splendid patina, as we can see on the left-hand side door. Or they develop new nails to fit it to the floor. They always find solution to make it as authentic, and practically those highly skilled craftsmen are building the future heritage. We don't have to forget that we are not in a static moment. We are practically in a flux. There was heritage before us and for sure will be after us. Another example, it's Philippe Gache, who practically designed completely this ceiling. This wasn't covered with lath and plaster before, it was just the oak structure. But because they find a few traces that maybe it have been lath and plaster, they were able to have the approval to build a new ceiling. So that was transformed like in a school of Jacobean handmade ceilings. And I also want to say that everything is done in the site by hand. All the ribs, moldings or decoration, everything is absolutely lovely, and we can see the human touch here. Philippe Gache is also a very good teacher, and he always has classes. We attended one with La Table Ronde d'Architecture. We organized one, and it was absolutely fabulous. I would like also to present another part of the new traditional architecture, which can be considered as an additional market for the skilled craftsmen. And why is this important to have an additional market? if the workload is much bigger and the craftsman can be sure that they will have enough work to do, then their business can develop and the youth can be attracted because this would be a safe industry. So it's very good to have more, and then we will be also able to repair the historical houses in case of a catastrophe, because for instance, when big historic house burns, there aren't enough craftsmen to repair it as soon as it's possible. So it's good to have a bigger mass of craftsmen. Here we can see for new traditional architecture, of course, much more expensive than what I show you by now, although the second example wasn't cheap at all. Those are part of the traditional architecture group, several British architects, where you can see stone works, very intricate and fantastic wall painting, joinery, new plaster, and also copper. I would like to add that in UK, we have several ways of educating the new craftsmen, and it's extremely important for them to understand that they can do this, but not as a secondary low status options, only for those who don't excel in the academic environment. I think working with their own hands, using traditional materials and building techniques, it's a very rewarding and honorable occupation with great mental health benefits, and often much more satisfying than an office or academic job. Not all the students have to follow the long and often frustrating path of higher education. We can often see, and the report showed that practically there is an increased tendency of reconversion into craftsmanship in the 30s, when the meaning of life becomes a bit clearer, that there is a movement on this direction. And we have several very good options for starting a career in craftsmanship in the UK. As you see, Wesleyan College, SPAB Fellowship, the Building Crafts College, and the King's Foundation, who's offering fantastic courses. And also they have a placement program after. And I would like to finish with the fact that, in my view, what's the most important is the reinstatement of the status of the craftsman, because only making them understand that this is a highly respected job, and also that you benefit from a strong sense of belonging to a community, about pride, only then we will be able to attract the youngs. Here we have two of the those groups that I would like to show you. The Worshipful Company of Plasterers, who are the plaster workers, and we can see them now receiving their freedom on the city. They are all very elegant and very happy with their achievements. And then the second one, probably much more known around Europe, are the Wandersgesellen. We have them in Transylvania, where we have a strong Saxon heritage, and they are extremely content of their outfit, their pride. They pay the high price for being a trained carpenter. They have to stay alone and travel and work and being extraordinary. Now you can see how happy they are at a meeting of those companions in Europe. And all I can say is to finish with the text from the Plasterers, just to emphasize the importance of the community to support those craftsmen. And they have this lovely motto, "Let brotherly love continue." So I think this is what really defines craftsmen, love in between the members, and also love of the craft, the materials, and in general life, and in all her manifestations. Thank you very much. That was my presentation.
Thank you, Georgia. That's a really nice presentation. Thank you very much also for sharing with us so many beautiful images. And it brings us to two important things about raising awareness. We have a question from Anna from Portugal. She's an historic house owner, and she says that the first obstacle for her are the craftspeople themselves, because they don't want to do more work. They just want to do the faster, and because she's not an architect, she just doesn't know what to do. And I think this happens quite often, that owners of buildings don't really know what the techniques should be and how they should restore their own properties, their own houses. So I think that raising awareness and knowledge, empowering knowledge, should involve all the society. Young people, as Dominique and Panos said, they should learn about their own built heritage at an early stage, but even people, adults, should learn more about how their buildings are made, so that when they need craftspeople, they know what to ask. Because apparently Anna, and I'm sure there are many other people in this situation, they just follow the advice of craftspeople. But if craftspeople want to isolate with chemical products and they want to put to use bad material, sorry, and then it's really important that people know more, and so that they can ask the craftspeople what they really need. When in the respect, maybe this question is for you, Georgia, because or even for everybody, because Rodolphe, maybe you also, you know that we launched some years ago this project Mécénat d'Artisans, which is precisely done to tell owners that craftspeople are the experts of their buildings, so they have to rely on good craftspeople, because this, from their point of view also, sometimes there is a lack of knowledge.
If I can answer to this question, I think here it's very important, the education, as you said, early education. Because if people are not able to distinguish in between good materials and bad materials, and they don't have the education of discerning and knowing how to look at the building, it's very difficult. But here sometimes comes also the legislation in the help. If a country has a good legislation, and if the building has a real historical value, the legislation will not let the owner to use modern cheap materials, because it will be practically forbidden this. A heritage asset, it's not belonging just to the owner, but it's a common good. It's a collective value and has to be preserved for the future generations. But after all, education, it's the point where things can start, and we don't have to wait until they become in high school or even university. Should start with introducing built environment in schools, and also heritage, because now there are some countries where there are schools hours for the children to understand architecture, but they are mostly based on modern architecture. And also, if the crafts or drawing lesson or modeling are again in school, they will appreciate how much effort goes in having those beautiful things around them. So that might be an answer.
Can I add something?
Sure.
We are talking a lot about training and education, which is fundamental, very important. But there is a lot of need also to talk about the business sector and the building industry of materials, for example, which is associated with the regulations that Georgia just mentioned as well. That means that talking about materials, let's say here there are a lot of protected areas that with stone slates on the top of the roof, that they shouldn't use ceramic tiles. They should just use stone slates. And there is no quarry for this nearby. So the regulation actually asks them to preserve the same tradition without having craftspeople. That is one point that we raised already. And you can't find it nearby. And it's very expensive to bring it from Albania or somewhere else. So like we need at the same time, and the governments and EU probably should help the building industry to promote the local and traditional and natural materials, as well as in general more sustainable materials, in order to be able to have these available in the market and people to work with them, because they are both tied together. Even if you educate people and these are not available, or people haven't used them in the market, it's very difficult to, yeah, to
Absolutely.
reach the result.
And due to the situation that is emerging,
It's difficult to implement. They are aware of all those problems, but to implement is difficult.
I think that the mobility you were mentioning, and I think Dominique is the best example of mobility, learning from each other in other regions where materials are available, learning techniques, etc. What do you think about the mobility? To empower the knowledge, the skills of future craftspeople. Because I think this, if materials are not available, skills are not available locally anymore, then empowering mobility through across Europe should be one objective as well.
Mobility for materials is not so good. But
no, mobility for people to learn,
knowledge, yes.
to learn, and yes, not for material. Any?
Say something.
Yeah, sure.
As Panos said, mobility is not so good because traditional architecture is very much linked to the place. So you cannot change the material to use a different material and a different material technique, because you will pervert practically the technique. And I have an example about this. In the 20s, when one of our biggest sociologists founded the first open-air museum in Bucharest, and they moved a lot of traditional houses there, he practically forbade the teams of builders, the local builders, to talk in between them until the buildings weren't erected. Because if they went to discuss in between them, they would have been so happy learning something new that they would destroy their own specific. So going back to the mobility, it's good somehow for general crafts, but not for very particular crafts applied to a region. It has to be very careful because, you know, if you mix a lot of colors, in the end you will got gray and you will use the brightness of the colors.
Yeah, I would like to have the Dominique's testimonials on this because of Boulouki concept of working with local communities, but still they are bringing. Dominique was trained all around the world. He traveled everywhere, but he's still using local techniques and local materials. And I mean, jumping into the culture of the territory, but with a wide view on what's happening also in other places. So I would like to have your testimonial, Dominique, on this.
Well, okay, it's a little bit different. First of all, you've got heritage buildings which need a replication of materials. So then if you don't have access to those materials, you're basically in big trouble. There's nothing you can do. You can't do a stone. You can't find the stones. All the quarries are locked up. You're not allowed to touch any stone, even in the river. So you basically have no choice in that situation. You're caught between a rock and a hard place. Sorry for the joke. But if it's not within the heritage sector, for me, it's I've often had to shift through a whole plethora of materials to what the customer can afford. So it's constantly, for me, a compromise. Say, for instance, my last few years of work here in Greece has been mostly for people who can only afford a very basic roof over their head. So most of my energy has not been into aesthetics. It's been into how to get a roof on these people's heads, which means you've got to, and Okay, that's really like the definition of a master, let's say an artisan, is that our job is to solve problems. The skills is a very small part of it. That's 5-10 years or something like that. I don't know. But how to solve problems. So here I have the people don't have enough money for this. How can I design a house with materials which aren't toxic in the best possible way? It's going to be a compromise, but the more information you have about materials as you get older, the more possibilities you have at your fingertips. You know, last year I did a house down in the Peloponnese, and I put 30 centimeters of just sawdust and saw shavings, wood shavings, and straw, barley straw, in the roof. That's what that person could afford. So, and then you have to be flexible at how you can do that within a roof space. So it's really, that's where craftsmen really need to, that's when you reach, after your few years of training, you start having to solve problems every day of your working life. And therefore you need training in, first of all, you've got to have passion, otherwise you can't be bothered. But you also need to start somehow to be trained in the flexibility of the mind, that you have a number of possibilities available to you. I'm just talking off from the top of my head, but is that a worthwhile thing to say?
That's very, very interesting. I think all this gives us a lot of information for how to empower the study that we are making, for example, the access to materials, but also the capacity of craftspeople to be problem solving and find and use techniques that they learn through experience to solve problems for the clients that are money problems or technical problems because the materials are not available anymore, etc. So these are all really interesting topics.
Also, sorry to interrupt, the last thing about that is obviously if you're working for a very rich client, say a person for whom money isn't a problem, then they will want whatever they can get from anyway, whatever it costs. You know, I've had marble flown from India to Europe, onyx, and on aeroplanes. So, and that's a totally different issue. What I'm much more interested in is how to use what is available, and that's just a matter of educating ourselves actually as artisans and architects, and what the possibilities are. The very project we're on right now is like that: how to get the insulation and keep Boulouki's sense of integrity in the building, which is their school. Anyway, that's it. Yeah.
There's a part of creativity also in finding solutions.
It's a form of creativity.
Absolutely. Of course. Anything, Jennifer, maybe you want to say the last words if there are no more questions or anything. Anybody wants to add anything? You're muted, Jenny. You're muted. We don't hear you, Jenny.
Sorry.
And now we do.
I think it's been an extremely valuable session, and the business about materials, I think, is really very important. I mean, for example, in the UK, if you want to be a glassmaker or whatever, there is nowhere in the UK that you can buy glass any longer. You have to go to France or Germany, and that is adding to the cost of the craft. So I think we need to be very, very aware of where our craft materials come from. The other thing is, I do think this idea of wandering craftsmen really needs to come back, just as it was in medieval times, because there are some absolutely fabulous craftspeople around, and it would be lovely to see them in different countries.
Thank you very much for being here. And as you know, the session was recorded, so we will We will share the recording as soon as it will be ready. And maybe it's time for lunch for most of you. So nobody else want to add anything? In that case, we say goodbye to, sorry? I heard.
Yes, I just wanted to
Hold
tell
on.
you something. Thank you very much for organizing that call. I think we've seen more and more during the conversation that we really need very quickly to find out some solutions. And you help us all. And I think we want to thank you, all of you who have organized that. Is it the FRH or your organization, media? I think it's very good, and I wanted to thank you for it. It's very useful, and we will help you as much as we can to continue on it.
Thank you very much, Rodolphe. And as we said, this is just the beginning. It's just the beginning. So we will do much more, involving more stakeholders, more studies, and more initiatives, because this has to go on. Thank you very much to everybody.
Thank you.
And
Thank
see you soon.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Well done
Bye.
organizing.
Bye-bye.
Amazing.
Thank you.